The United States is not a member of the International Criminal Court, but its citizens could face prosecution if they commit crimes in a country that is a member, such as Afghanistan. The ICC chief prosecutor says US soldiers and members of the CIA may have used what she calls cruel and violent techniques to interrogate detainees between 2003 and 2014. In her report, Fatou Bensouda wrote, members of US armed forces appear to have subjected at least 61 detained persons to torture, cruel treatment, outrages upon personal dignity on the territory of Afghanistan between the 1st of May 2003 and the 31st of December 2014. Analysts say it's a significant decision by the ICC.
This would be the first time, as you point out, that the ICC has set its sights potentially on U.S. personnel. It does look like they're going to be focusing intensively on the activities of the CIA in Afghanistan, primarily in 2003, 2004.
The ICC chief prosecutor also says members of the CIA may have tortured Afghan detainees in secret detention facilities in Poland, Romania and Lithuania. All three countries are members of the ICC. The State Department says it doesn't believe an ICC investigation is warranted or appropriate, but analysts say a full investigation is likely if the court decides the US judicial system will not take action. During the presidential campaign, then-candidate Donald Trump suggested that as president he would change laws that ban waterboarding and other illegal interrogation techniques. So far, all the ICC's trials have dealt with crimes committed in Africa. The ICC says it's now considering a full investigation into allegations against US soldiers and CIA agents. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Latest news, Afghanistan. Headliner: United States and European Union condemn Taliban over summary killings and demand investigation. Dated December 5th, 2021. The United States on Saturday led a group of Western nations and allies in condemnation of the Taliban over the summary killings of former members of the Afghan security forces, reported by rights groups demanding quick investigations. We are deeply concerned by reports of summary killings and enforced disappearances of former members of the Afghan security forces, as documented by Human Rights Watch and others, read a statement by the United States, the European Union, Australia, Japan, and others, which was released by the U.S. State Department. It also went on to say, we underline that the alleged actions constitute serious human rights abuses and contradict the Taliban's announced amnesty. Earlier this week, Human Rights Watch released a report that it says documents the summary execution or enforced disappearance of 47 former members of the Afghan National Security Forces, other military personnel, police, and intelligence agents who had surrendered or were apprehended by Taliban forces from mid-August to October. Reported cases must be investigated promptly and in a transparent manner. Those responsible must be held accountable, and these steps must be clearly publicized as an immediate deterrent to future killings and disappearances. The countries, which include Canada, New Zealand, Romania, Ukraine, and several European nations, said in a statement. The Taliban took power in Afghanistan in August as the US-backed government in Kabul and the country's military collapsed. Their return to master the country came some 20 years after they were driven out by US forces that ended a fundamentalist rule that earned opprobrium for its brutal treatment of women, failure to uphold human rights, and harsh interpretation of Islam. Today's Taliban leaders, keen to gain international respectability, have pledged their regime will be different. The new government has continued to carry out violent punishments, and the United Nations has expressed concern about credible allegations that the Taliban has carried out reprisal killings since its victory, despite the promises of amnesty for the fallen government troops. In its report, Human Rights Watch said Taliban leaders have directed something have directed surrendering security forces to register with authorities in order to be screened for ties to certain military or special force units and to receive a letter guaranteeing their safety. Human Rights Watch went on to say, however, the Taliban have used these screenings to detain and summarily execute unforcibly disappear individuals within days of their registration, leaving their bodies for their relatives or communities to find. Washington held talks with Taliban officials early this week, the second round of discussions since U.S. forces left. It also expressed deep concern regarding allegations of human rights abuses, a U.S. spokesman said. Headliner, International Criminal Court's prosecutor defends dropping United States from Afghan war crime probe. Dated December 6, 2021. The International Criminal Court prosecutor has defended omitting the United States from an investigation in Afghanistan, saying the worst crimes were committed by the Taliban and the Islamic State. Rights groups criticized Karim Khan's decision in September to deprioritize the investigation into American forces, focus instead on Afghanistan's new rulers and the rival Islamic State in Khorasan province, an ISIL affiliate. Khan told a meeting of ICC countries in The Hague on Monday, I made a decision based upon the evidence that the worst crimes in terms of gravity and scale and extent seem to be committed by the so-called Islamic State in Khorasan and also the Taliban. And I said I would prioritize these, and I have asked the judges for authorization to carry out those investigations. The ICC's Afghan investigation into U.S. war crimes had long enraged Washington and prompted the administration of then President Donald Trump to impose new sanctions on Khan's predecessor, Fatou Bensouda. The now deposed government in Kabul then asked the court in early 2020 to pause its inquiry while investigating war crimes domestically. Meanwhile, Khan in September asked judges to relaunch the process, saying the Taliban's takeover in August meant war crimes would no longer be investigated properly. Judges have asked for more clarity over who is officially in charge in Afghanistan before deciding. The British prosecutor, meanwhile, said while the recent coup in Sudan had caused a bit of a hiatus, he expected his team to be able to return soon to continue its war crimes investigation there. Khan visited Khartoum in August to sign a cooperation deal to push through a genocide trial for ex-leader Omar al-Bashir over the Darfur conflict. He added that the time for change is ripe at the ICC in general, reiterating earlier promises to focus on cases with a likely chance of conviction and drop those where successful prosecution is unlikely. That's the latest news, and now my thoughts. Pretty convenient that one of the very few co-signers of the Rome Statutes is the United States, and they still escape allegations of war crimes. When there is plenty of evidence to show that the U.S. has committed numerous war crimes in Afghanistan. Including even leaving the country. Where a airstrike, one of the final war crimes of the United States, which happened on August 29th, an airstrike that killed 10 people, 7 of which were children, mistaking them for members of the Islamic State in Khorasan. However, reports intelligence reports were quite poignant in suggesting that these were not militants. That's just one incident, and that's near the end. This comes at the heel of a 20-year war, the longest in American history. The amount of people that were killed in this war, in the tens of thousands, including private military contractors, human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, where the reports have been coming in for years. Extrajudicial killings by CIA-backed Afghan special forces, arbitrary detentions, summary executions using the Joint Special Operations Command in night raids in towns like Paktia, Wardak, Kandahar, capture or kill operations in Warduk, Hasarak, special forces raids on towns like Uzugan and Ghazni, and of course, the international humanitarian laws regarding the treatment of detainees, applicability of the laws of war, fundamental protections. This is all documented. This is just one country, not to mention other countries like Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen. But the outrage that the Taliban or the Islamic State are committing war crimes, well, we know what they're about. And we know about the United States training and funding the Islamic State in Syria in a CIA-led operation called Timber Sycamore. That the Islamic State in Khorasan, which is an affiliate of the Islamic State, who knows how many of them were a product of Operation Timber Sycamore. And yet, for the United States and their allies, the coalition, to talk about condemnation of summary killings by the Taliban, I find to be the height of hypocrisy. But it's the United States who condemned Afghanistan to a 20-year war. Destruction, destabilization, which have led to approximately 300,000 people killed. We'll never know the true cost or the exact amount due to the nature of technology and drone strikes and iron fragmentation bombs, and of course, the mother of all bombs, Moabs. which can decimate a human body into molecules. A casualty, a holocaust of conflict, war, debasement, racism, rape, and the overall degradation of humanity. And the United States does it like no other country.